The wind dragged her name through the mesquite like a ghost that wouldn't rest. Cassie ran, barefoot, bleeding, breath catching in her throat like barbed wire. Her pale yellow dress, once stitched by her mother's hands, now clung in tatters to her legs, soaked in sweat, streaked in blood. Every step tore skin, every thorn a reminder she was still alive. Barely. Behind her the hoofbeats, slow, steady, hunting. Jed Rourke didn't gallop. He didn't need to. He knew she'd break soon. She always did. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred. Her fingers gripped the tiny silver pendant at her throat, the one she hid when he came near, the one thing she had left. A branch tore across her cheek. She didn't feel it. The pain in her ribs was worse, from earlier that night when Jed slammed her into the cellar door. "Run if you want," he had hissed, liquor on his breath, belt in hand. "But you ain't outrunning blood, girl." Now the sky split with distant thunder, but no rain came, just the dry, suffocating weight of prairie air thick with heat and fear. Cassie stumbled down a shallow ridge, knees buckling, her foot caught on a root. She hit the ground hard, the wind knocked clean out of her. She tried to crawl, dirt filled her mouth. Behind her the hoofbeats stopped. Silence. Then, the creak of leather, spurs clicking against dry rock. Jed's voice was calm, cruel. "You done now, girl?" She turned over, tried to scream, but all that came was a whisper. "Forgive me, Lord. I can't run anymore." The pistol raised. Then, nothing. Blackness. A long, final exhale into dust and dusk. And somewhere far off, a hawk circled overhead, watching like God with tired eyes. The sun hadn't yet cleared the horizon when Elias Boone spotted the buzzards. They circled low, slow, too low for dead cattle. He reined in his old chestnut gelding and narrowed his eyes toward the canyon gulch. Boone, Jr., his blue heeler, barked once, then stilled beside the horse's leg, ears twitching. Elias was a man built from silence and scars, 48 winters behind him, each etched into his weathered hands and deep-set eyes. He didn't speak unless the land demanded it, and this land was whispering something wrong. He nudged the horse forward, rifle slung across his saddle horn, boots worn smooth at the heel. Then he saw her. At first, just fabric, a torn strip of yellow caught on a sage bush like a prayer flag in a place God had left long ago. Then the shape of her, curled at the base of the gulch, face in the dirt, blood crusted along her temple. He dismounted fast. "Easy now," he muttered, crouching low. The girl was young, maybe 20, skin raw from sun and briars, feet cut and swollen. Her lips were cracked, trembling, still breathing, just barely. He eased his coat from his shoulders and wrapped it around her trembling form. Her dress was torn to near shreds, barely clinging. His coat swallowed her whole. "Don't take me back," she murmured, eyes fluttering open like a child waking from nightmare. "Please." "You ain't going back anywhere," Elias said, voice low as worn leather. Her eyes rolled back. She slipped under again. He didn't ask questions, just gathered her in his arms like something precious and broken. She weighed nothing, but her silence, that weighed everything. Elias lifted her onto the saddle in front of him, holding her steady with one arm. Boone Jr. barked once and took off ahead, leading the way home. Dust rose behind them like smoke off a gun barrel, and though Elias hadn't seen who did this, he knew a man's hands when they leave marks like that. He gritted his teeth, eyes fixed on the horizon. Whoever hurt this girl would have to ride through him now. The cabin stood quiet on a ridge, wrapped in the hush of pine and creaking wind. One wind. Dow shutter hung loose, tapping against the wood like a heartbeat. Smoke curled from the chimney, slow, steady, and inside the warmth of the fire fought off the bite of dawn. Elias kicked the door open gently with his boot, cradling the girl in his arms like something already halfway to heaven. He laid her down on the old cot near the stove. The thin mattress let out a sigh of dust. Boone Jr. paced by the door, sniffing the floorboards, ears sharp. Elias removed his hat, set it gently on the hook by the door, and reached for a clean rag. He dipped it in the basin, wrung it slow, then sat beside her. Her face was pale, a smear of dirt across her cheek. The bruises were dark, fresh. He touched the cloth to her forehead. She flinched. "Easy," he said. "Ain't nobody here but me." Her eyes blinked open, just for a breath, wild, distrusting. Then they closed again, her body curling away from his hand. He didn't push, just sat there as the fire cracked behind them, light flickering across the walls like ghosts dancing. An hour passed before she spoke. Where am I?" "Cabin, half-mile from Red Rock Bluff. You're safe." She tried to sit, but her limbs refused. "No one's coming through that door unless I say so," Elias added. "You hungry?" She didn't answer, just stared at the floor. Elias stood, ladled some stew from the pot, and set it by her bedside. A spoon rested beside it on a folded cloth napkin. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence. He nodded once. "No rush? Don't need to tell me nothing you don't want to." As he turned, she whispered, "Cassie." He paused. "Cassie," he repeated, voice soft. "All right then." He stepped outside, letting the screen door creak and slap behind him. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and old blood. Inside, Cassie pulled his coat tighter around her body. It smelled of saddle leather and something else. Safety. The sun sank behind the mesas, painting the sky blood red. Shadows stretched long across the prairie, folding into themselves like whispered threats. Elias stood on the porch, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the horizon where the dust rose like a warning. Boone Jr. sat at his feet, ears stiff, tail flicking. Far off, the clatter of hooves echoed through the canyon. Jed Rourke. And behind him, two men, lean and cruel, riding like wolves with the scent of fear in their nostrils. The gang was coming, and they smelled the girl's blood on the wind. Inside, Cassie pressed herself against the wall, knees drawn up. Her hands trembled around the edge of the cot. Every muscle ached, every memory screamed. She could hear the leather on the floorboards, the soft shuffle of Elias moving outside, preparing, waiting. The door rattled with a tentative kick. A twig snapped under a hoof. Elias tightened his grip on the rifle. "They think they own the night," he muttered. Boone Jr. growled low in his throat. Cassie's voice cracked as she whispered, "He won't stop, will he?" Elias's jaw set. "Neither will I." The wind kicked up, carrying the scent of sage and smoke from distant fires. Shadows of the approaching riders stretched across the cabin walls. The sun dipped behind the ridge, and the first stars began to burn cold light into the desert sky. From the ridge, Jed's voice carried, flat and cruel. "Cassie, come out. Ain't nowhere to hide, girl." Her stomach dropped. Memories of slaps, threats, and cold whiskey nights surfaced like dark water rising. "Not tonight," Elias whispered under his breath. He checked the locks, double-bolted the door, and loaded another round into his rifle. Not ever again. Boone Jr. circled, fur bristling. Outside, the first torch flickered, then another, then a third, eyes hunting through the dark. The prairie wind twisted around the cabin, carrying with it a low, eerie howl. Inside, Cassie huddled by the fire, the orange glow painting her tear-streaked face. She swallowed, trembling, trying to hold back sobs. Elias glanced at her, voice gentle but firm. "Keep low, Cassie. Watch and learn. We ain't giving up without fight." The night thickened, dust rose, spurs clicked, the shadows waited, and somewhere in the distance a lone wolf howled, a reminder that even in the wildest, loneliest places, someone was watching. Someone was ready to fight. And so, the night began. Elias rode into the town at first light, the chestnut gelding's hooves clattering against the wooden planks of the main street. The town was quiet, almost too quiet. Abandoned chairs on porches, shutters rattling in the wind, dust swirling like memory. The sheriff's office door hung ajar, empty. The badge had been gone for months, chased away by men like Jed Rourke. Elias dismounted, Boone Jr. at his side, nose to the ground, sniffing for trouble. He adjusted his hat and walked toward the small church at the edge of town. There, waiting on the porch with a Bible tucked under his arm, was Preacher Holloway, a man with hands worn from years of labor, eyes that had seen blood, and a voice that had carried justice in a quieter time. "Elias Boone," the preacher said, voice gravel and calm. "You've got the look of a man who's carried the dead and the living too long." "I found her," Elias said, eyes sharp, jaw tight. "Barefoot, bruised. He won't stop. I need someone who remembers how to fight for more than sermons." Holloway nodded slowly. "There's no law left in this town," he said, glancing down the empty street. "Only men who decide what's right on the barrel of a gun." Back at the cabin, Cassie stirred. The fire's glow danced across her face as she sat upright, noticing the worn medals and old photographs Elias had pulled from a box. War medals, a rifle etched with years of battle, a man who had survived and therefore could teach her to survive. When Elias returned that evening, the horizon was bleeding red again, the first torch flames flickering in the distance. Cassie stood near the cabin's edge, eyes wide. "They'll be back tonight," Elias said quietly. "We stand." She swallowed hard, nodding, gripping the hem of the coat he had wrapped around her days ago. I don't know if I can," she whispered. "You will," Elias said, voice steady. "You've already run through hell to get here. Hell won't take you twice." The wind shifted, carrying dust and the faint scent of horse sweat and fire. The first stars began to pierce the deepening sky, glinting like eyes watching over them. Boone Jr. padded beside her, tail low but alert. Shadows gathered in the distant hills, Jed's gang, moving like predators, waiting for a crack in the night. Cassie clenched her fists, heart hammering. For the first time, she understood something she hadn't before. The fight wasn't about running anymore. It was about standing. And standing meant believing someone would stand with her. Elias glanced at her. He didn't say it, but his eyes carried the truth. Tonight, they wouldn't be taken. Not by him, not by anyone. The night was coming, and with it, a reckoning. Night fell hard, thick as a black velvet curtain swallowing the cabin and the ridge. Lanterns flickered on the distant hilltops, casting trembling light across the sage and dust. Jed Rourke's gang had arrived, circling like vultures, whispers of cruelty drifting on the wind. The firelight in the cabin threw long, jagged shadows, cutting the walls into sharp angles of fear. Elias stood on the porch, rifle in hand. Boone Jr. crouched low, growling deep in his throat. Cassie huddled behind the doorframe, knees drawn, teeth clenched, heart hammering like the hooves of the approaching horses. She could hear the shuffle of boots in the dirt, the creak of leather, and the whisper of Jed's voice carried on the wind. "Cassie, step out, girl. Ain't nowhere to hide," Jed called, voice smooth, cruel, soaked with liquor. Elias's eyes narrowed. "Keep low," he murmured. "Watch the fire, watch the wind, don't breathe too loud." Torches bobbed on the horizon, casting hungry eyes across the prairie. The gang shouted, mocking, promising pain and fire, but Elias's hands never wavered on the rifle. He waited, patient, like a rock in a river, knowing the current would bring them close enough to strike. A shot rang out, a warning. Dust kicked up, embers flickered, and Boone Jr. leapt, barking, snapping at shadows. The gang fired, bullets tearing into the porch and splintering wood. Elias returned fire, slow and steady, forcing them back. One man fell, rolling into the dirt with a groan. Then a Molotov shattered against the barn. Flames licked the roof, casting the sky in orange and black. Cassie screamed, eyes wide as fire leapt like a living thing. Without thinking, she bolted, dragging a small calf from the edge of the blaze. Smoke stung her lungs, but she ran, her body remembering courage before fear. Elias grunted, shoulder stinging where a bullet grazed him, but he pressed forward, fists tight on the rifle. Every shot, every breath, every motion was a dance with death, precise and desperate. He knocked another rider off his horse, the man screaming into the night, swallowed by the chaos. Cassie dropped the calf near the cabin, coughing, smoke curling around her. Elias looked at her, blood and sweat mingling, firelight painting them both in gold and ash. "Stay inside," he shouted, voice cutting over the roar of flames. "Stay alive, Cassie. Watch and learn." The night was alive with fire, gunpowder, and the howl of Boone Jr. Every shadow was a threat, every spark a promise, and through it all a quiet truth settled. No one would leave this night the same, not Jed, not his gang, and not them. The prairie night was ripped open by the sound of hooves and lanterns swinging like distant stars. Just when the flames of the barn threatened to consume all hope, a new group appeared. Preacher Holloway and two retired deputies riding hard, eyes burning with purpose. Their rifles gleamed in the firelight, and the wind carried the sharp scent of justice. Elias spotted them first, a hard edge of relief cutting through the fatigue and pain in his shoulder. Boone Jr. barked furiously, circling the cabin, sensing reinforcements had arrived. Cassie, crouched behind the cot, peered through the crack of the window, disbelief in her eyes. She had never seen help arrive like this, like thunder riding the wind. Jed Rourke, perched on his horse atop the ridge, bellowed at his men. Confusion and fury tangled in his voice. "What the hell is this? Back off!" His gang faltered, unsure, exposed in the sudden light. The fire painted them grotesque, shadows twisting over their faces like masks of sin. The first gunshots erupted, sharp and deliberate. Holloway and the deputies moved with practiced precision, taking positions that pinned the gang between fire and lead. Elias, limping slightly but steady, took a careful aim, knocking a man off his horse with a crack of rifle fire. Dust rose, embers danced, and chaos became a symphony of survival. Jed charged the porch, fists swinging, rage in every movement. Elias met him, a growl deep in his chest, and they collided in the dirt. Fists pounded and scraped, teeth gritted, the smell of smoke and iron thick around them. Every strike carried years of fear, pain, and anger, now unleashed. Cassie's hands shook, gripping Elias's fallen rifle. Jed lunged at him, eyes wide and cruel, her body tensed. Without thinking, she pulled the trigger. The loud crack split the night, a warning shot that cracked the tension in half. Jed froze, eyes wide, and Preacher Holloway stepped forward, cuffs in hand, snapping them around Jed's wrists. The gang scrambled, disoriented, retreating into the night, leaving fire and dust behind. The barn smoldered, but the cab in stood firm. Boone Jr. barked once, sharp, then settled beside Cassie, tail wagging lightly, sensing victory. Elias breathed heavy, blood on his shoulder, sweat on his brow, and for the first time, too,